The Boston Bruins are getting zero respect in preseason prognostications, and I'm here to tell you to smash the over on their projected points.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is September 1st, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this is the unofficial Season 7 premiere of the podcast. Been doing this since 2019, and I am so excited to get into a new Boston Bruins season. You can feel the coolness rising in the atmosphere. Training camp just around the corner. We're a few weeks away from the first Bruins preseason game. And on today's episode, we are going to discuss why the point projection of 76.5 is way too low, plus the debut of a new recurring segment, the Bruin of the Day. Before we get into all that, quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. That's X, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team, plus the NHL at large for various outlets for 20 years. Now, for those of you who may be new to the podcast, just a quick note on why this podcast is a bit different. There's tons of Bruins podcasts out there, many of which I really enjoy, and I know there are good people behind them. Here at Locked On Boston Bruins, we're bringing you daily episodes. Bruins talk every weekday, so you never fall behind, plus the odd bonus weekend episode, breaking news shorts, reels, TikToks, and we're all about context here. Headlines are easy. Here, you'll get deeper analysis, stats, and history. Look, I've got a huge passion for the Bruins, and you can think of this podcast as your daily Bruins coffee chat, plugged into the Locked On NHL family with, again, expert analysis from local experts who are just passionate about bringing you your team every single day. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into today's episode. Again, the unofficial Season 7 premiere. Been doing this for quite a while now, and the Bruins have had many ups and downs. When this podcast debuted, they were coming off their 2019 Stanley Cup final run. That led into COVID years, highs, lows, and this past season, of course, was one of the lowest we've seen in quite some time. 76 points, last in the Eastern Conference. And once again, this season, FanDuel is putting their line at 76.5, basically saying this team is no better than last year. It was at 80.5 just a few weeks ago when I had this conversation, bit of a soft take saying take the over. Now I'm here to say smash that over because I do believe this team will be better than last year. And I do believe this team will have more things going for them than against them like they did last year. Putting the line at 76.5 says, again, this team is no better. You're assuming no bounce back in health, consistency, no real improvement from young players, no impact from offseason additions either this summer or last summer. But we all know this team is led by David Pastrnak, who is an elite point producer at the NHL level. We know that Charlie McAvoy Hampus Lindholm are anchors on the back end, and they missed a significant amount of time in 2024-25. Lindholm was limited to like 12 games before hurting his knee and missing the rest of the season. McAvoy was injured at the Four Nations face-off and was not able to play following that tournament. And just those two guys coming back alone should help this Bruins team in terms of stabilizing the back end, limiting the opponent's, offensive opportunities, and also helping, redistribute the defense core in a way that is more realistic. Last season, you had Mason Lohrei. No disrespect, he's a great young talent, but his defensive game obviously still needs some improvement. You had him playing heavy minutes down the stretch, going up against some of the opposition's best players. That's not an ideal deployment for Mason Lohrei. You have McAvoy coming back, Lindholm coming back, your top two defensemen who will be playing, most likely in the top four, kind of those minutes spread out. That's a huge advantage for the Boston Bruins to have those two guys back. You just put them on last year's team, and there's probably some improvement there. They're not as bad as they were last season. The Bruins bottomed out last season because of those injuries. And it was clear that they were not going to be in the playoff mix because they were missing those two guys. And so they made the decision to subtract at the trade deadline. Goodbye, Charlie Coyle. Goodbye, Brandon Carlo. Goodbye, Brad Marchand, Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau. And so it was a concerted decision to kind of bottom out. And it paid off because they were able to draft James Higgins, 7th overall. Is that the plan this season? I mean, it's possible that they could be in the same position at this season's trade deadline. But the return of McAvoy and Lindholm, both of whom are healthy, who are motivated. Lindholm said he is in great shape and he's excited to erase the memory of last season's disappointment. And, he said, and rightfully so, he was playing some of the best hockey of his career prior to that injury. You get him back on the ice, in the lineup, and there's no way the Bruins can't be better with McAvoy and Lindholm in the lineup. And that should, of course, also impact a guy like Jeremy Swayman, who had a very rough year. Talk about getting no respect. He's fallen outside of the top 10 rankings in terms of goaltenders. He is not being drafted all that high in fantasy leagues. And, perhaps rightfully so. There is some reason to be cautious when it comes to Jeremy Swayman. But again, you had those two guys out. His numbers were especially brutal on the penalty kill. So if you can improve the penalty kill a little bit, his numbers should improve at least back to the 900 level. And of course, you have the Marco Sturm effect. A fresh voice, accountability, new systems, still that kind of defense-first mentality, but with some new looks, perhaps offensively, some fresh voices to help the young kids come along, to be able to balance some of the new guys coming in as well. Some renewed structure, just in terms of, all right, we know who the coach is going to be for this full season and for the next couple. Last year, you had the uncertainty of Jim Montgomery replaced by Joe Sacco. Is he going to be around? Elias Lindholm said last year it was just so many things that were going wrong for this team. The Bruins don't need to be a Stanley Cup contender to clear 76.5 points. They don't even need to be a playoff lock. 76.5 points is a floor number, and they just need not to be a catastrophe once again in order to clear that. And in my opinion, they should very easily clear 76.5 points. And coming up, we'll discuss a few more reasons why that will be the case. And also going to debut the new Bruin of the Day segment. That's all coming up here as the podcast continues. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your team or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, I just love FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays, not to mention Thursday, Monday. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Put $5 down on week one action. If it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app at FanDuel.com. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Please do subscribe if you have not already on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Also hit that notification button so that you know when a new episode drops. If you could also rate and review on Apple, Spotify, that would be so very much appreciated. And speaking of feedback, we have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find a link in the show notes. Thank you so much for helping out. All right, let's continue our look at why the over is the smart bet for the Boston Bruins this season. So many things went wrong for this team last year. It was a catastrophic season for the Boston Bruins, where injuries, contract situations lingered into the training camp, exhibition, beginning of the regular season. You had a coach who was fired and replaced. You had a goaltender who was not playing up to his abilities. You had a couple new faces who were brought in that took some time to get established, and just a bevy of things. And of course, the trades that kind of reduced the potency of the lineup down the stretch. The top end talent is still there, though. You have David Pastrnak, who is a perennial 40-goal, 100-point candidate, and who has really expanded his game to a playmaker as well as a pure goal scorer. And you saw him elevate Morgan Geekie's game last season. Hopefully that chemistry will continue, and we will see David Pastrnak, who has been healthy over the last few seasons, just continue to produce at the elite level that he can do. And, if the Bruins are in a playoff conversation or in a playoff spot at the end of the season, once again, he should be a Hart Trophy candidate. You have Charlie McAvoy, an elite two-way defender who is so effective in his own zone and perhaps has another level to hit offensively. And then, of course, you have Jeremy Swayman, who has proven time and time again that he can be one of the top goaltenders in the NHL. Just think back to the 2024 postseason where he was the top goaltender in the playoffs through the 2 rounds in which he played. And that team was meant to be a transition roster. You had lost Patrice Bergeron. A bunch of guys moved on. And this was not a team that was expected to do much. Not this past season, but the season prior. They beat the Maple Leafs and put up a pretty good fight against the Florida Panthers even after Brad Marchand was knocked out. And a lot of that was because of Jeremy Swayman. Another reason why I'm taking the over is this is a big season for last summer's additions. Elias Lindholm is entering year 2 in Boston. He is healthy, which was a problem last season. In a recent Swedish article, he talked about how he had a back injury heading into training camp last season, did not feel great, missed a lot of time, and it took him a couple months to feel healthy and to get into the flow. He's more comfortable, he's healthy, and he seemingly has an established role as the center on the top line alongside Morgan Geekie and David Pastrnak. And that trio was pretty effective down the stretch last season. You have Geekie and Pastrnak who can score off the wing or make some passes. Lindholm's kind of that north-south guy who can go to the net, be a disruptor, and hopefully also win some key faceoffs to set up some shots from the point. If all goes well, that should be your top line. Same thing with Nikita Zadorov. He was, had a rotating door in and out of the penalty box last season. That was one of the reasons why they signed Tanner Jeannot, to kind of remove that enforcer role from Zadorov's plate. With McAvoy and Lindholm coming back, he won't be called upon to play as heavy minutes. And you saw him as well late last season kind of step up as a leader. And I could see him wearing the A at some points this season. Both of those guys, it takes time to adjust to a new city, to a new system, new faces in the room, new dynamics in the room. With Carlo Coyle, Marchand gone, you have, space now for both of these guys who are signed long-term to step up as leaders on this team. We saw it down the stretch, and I fully expect that to be the case once training camp begins. These guys, they're, for better or worse, whether you agree with the signings or not, last summer, these guys are going to be around for a few more years yet, and they are kind of your secondary core around Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman. They also added some new faces in the offseason. Victor Arvidsson is a proven scorer who adds a middle six punch. You have also some additions that were made at the trade deadline, namely Casey Middlestat, who I believe could have a nice bounce back year for the Bruins, hopefully get back to the 50-plus point levels that he recorded as a member of the Colorado Avalanche. Tanner Jeannot, widely panned as one of the worst signings of the summer, but he does bring some size, edge to the bottom six, and perhaps could also chip in offensively. Still not super pumped about that signing, but who knows? You have Matej Blümel and Alex Steeves who were brought in as well. Skilled forwards who were 1-2 in scoring goals in the AHL last season. Hopefully there will also be a bit of internal growth as well. Morgan Geekie took big steps forward last year. He was rewarded by signing a nice new contract this offseason. He should have some regression in terms of shooting percentage, but at the same time, when you have David Pastrnak setting you up or acting as a decoy, so that frees you up with more space, I fully expect at least another 25-goal season from Morgan Geekie. There's some internal growth that could happen as well from guys like Marat, Khusnutdinov, Fraser Minton, Matt Poitras, all who can bring some speed and skill down the middle. Look, it all comes down kind of to Jeremy Swayman, though. He's a proven all-star caliber goaltender. He is in consideration for Team USA, and that's going to be a big motivator for a lot of these players this season is the Olympics and wanting to play for their respective countries in Italy. Swayman is in line to be backup or third goalie behind Connor Hellebuck, Jake Ottinger. Even if he plays average by his standard, which is around a 900 save percentage, the Bruins won't sink to 76 points again. Look, am I saying this team is a playoff lock? No. If you look at the Atlantic Division, Toronto, Florida, Tampa, established contenders. Toronto, even after losing Mitch Marner. Ottawa, Montreal were playoff teams last season. Both remain on the rise. You look at the Metropolitan Division, you got to assume Carolina, New Jersey, probably Washington will be playoff teams over there. Other teams looking to make the jump, the Blue Jackets, the Islanders, maybe Philly, Pittsburgh, probably not. That leaves Boston probably in the bubble playoff team category. Math check, a 500 team has 82 points. The Bruins don't need to be great. They don't even need to be all that good to clear 76.5 points. Pretty much just average, a 500 team. And everydayers will remember a few weeks ago, I went through the schedule and had them pegged around that point. I think they should be at least a 500 team this season. 82 points, 5 clear of 77. So that would put them in the over. So that's my firm, solid take here to begin this new season of podcast episodes. Take the over when it comes to the Boston Bruins. All right, coming up, I'm going to debut a new segment on the podcast, which is the Bruin of the Day. And we'll get to that here as the podcast continues. So every day coming up this season on the podcast, I'm going to award a Bruin of the Day. And it doesn't have to be a present Bruin. It can be a projected future Bruin, or it could be a Bruin of the past. And it's all just going to be about going down memory lane, looking up to the future to see what's coming up in terms of prospects, or highlighting a guy on the current roster who is stepping up, whether it be on or off the ice. And when I was thinking about who should be the first Bruin of the day, obviously we're not in training camp yet. There's not really anything going on the ice in terms of the Boston Bruins, but I have had a few interesting things going on lately with Bruin of the Day today, September 1st, 2025. None other than number 4, Bobby Orr. So why Bobby Orr today? Well, recently I went to my wife's uncle's home, and he is a guy who has a ridiculously extensive Bobby Orr memorabilia collection. And he brought it out of storage, set it all up, and my wife Lauren and I were able to go down and take a look at the numerous cards, sticks, jerseys, photos, books, bobbleheads, mini helmets. Just so cool to see all this memorabilia that he has collected over the years. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see every day in the background, I've got my own Bobby Orr piece of memorabilia, the flying goal photo, which says, to Ian, best of luck, Bobby Orr, which is a great thing to look at every day. Not only that, but last week we were in cottage country here in Ontario, and we did a little drive into Parry Sound. I was able to check out the big sign as you're driving in that says Parry Sound, home of Bobby Orr, and also go check out the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame. I didn't go in. We didn't have time for that, but it was just so cool to be in the birthplace of Bobby Orr, to see where he learned how to play hockey, where he learned to skate. Career dominance for Bobby Orr. 8 Norris trophies, 2 cups, 3 hearts, 2 Conn Smythes, the flying goal, one of the greatest hockey players of all time, the greatest Bruin of all time, and just an iconic hockey figure. And I was reminded today is the day that Terry Fox ended his run up here in Canada, for cancer. And Mike Camito, when he was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, talked about Bobby Orr meeting Terry Fox along the way and, hooking him up with some great donations for his amazing cause. Now, I'm not going to lie. I do have a bit of a complicated view of Bobby Orr, because some of his political views later in life have divided some fans. But like today's Bruins, this team's not perfect, sometimes frustrating. Orr is still a foundational piece of Bruins history, Bruins lore, Bruins, just what it means to be a Boston Bruin. Seeing that memorabilia, being in his hometown, his presence felt bigger than history. He's like the part of the DNA of this team. But again, off the ice, personally, it's a bit complicated, because you look at his personal views and you think, maybe while it would be cool to shake his hand once again, which I've already done, talk hockey, once it gets away from that, maybe we don't have as much in common. Is it complicated? Yes. Perfect? No. But absolutely unforgettable. Bobby Orr is the greatest Bruin of all time, one of the greatest Bruins one of the greatest players in team history. And as part of the DNA of the franchise, everything the team is creatively, competitively, refusing mediocrity, it traces back to him. It's a reminder that idols can be complicated. Your favorite hockey team can be complicated. There's flaws, there's ups and downs. But like the Bruins, Orr is still our guy. And the Bruins, again, they're complicated right now. They're not necessarily fun to watch. They are perfectly imperfect. And still, we support them. We root for them. We call them out when necessary. But at the end of the day, it's still all love. And it's just something we love to do. Talk about our favorite hockey team every single day. Whether I hosted this podcast or not, I'd be chomping to talk about the Bruins each and every day. It's something I've been doing to myself or to others for the majority of my life. And dating back to elementary school, high school, hockey, the Bruins, always something that I was talking about. So I think Bobby Orr is a perfect Bruin of the day. It's kind of fitting for this moment in Bruins history too. The current team isn't perfect. Bruins fans' relationship with Orr is a little complicated. He's taken some political stances, made some endorsements that don't sit well with everybody. And that can create some tension. How do you square the hockey legend with the person off the ice? And again, this current team isn't perfect. They've got warts. They've got question marks. They frustrate us at times, but we still love them because they're our Bruins. And with Orr, it's the same thing. We can acknowledge the flaws or the disagreements, but he's still our guy. He's still the foundation of what this franchise is. Seeing that memorabilia really hit me with that perspective. He isn't just a piece of Bruins history. He's not just a name in the rafters or a statue outside the Garden. He's the DNA of the Boston Bruins. And everything this team is about, striving for greatness, refusing to accept mediocrity, fighting through injuries, next man up, playing the game with creativity and passion, it all traces back to him. So for our very first Bruin of the day, who else could it be? Bobby Orr. Complicated, sure. Perfect, no. Unforgettable. And without question, still the greatest Boston Bruin of all time. All right, that is it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the podcast if you're new, for joining me once again if you are an everydayer. Bruins projected at 76.5 points. Health, youth, depth, culture will put them firmly above that. Tomorrow, we're going to be back with all the latest on the Boston Bruins. So please do hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a thing. Follow on YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Rate and review. Hit the notification button. Join the community on socials. And, who knows what this season is going to have in store. But for me, the Bruins are going to exceed their current very low expectations. Don't forget to check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. All the latest from our local experts from around the league. You can find it on Locked On NHL channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.